quite candidly, one of the first technologies that students are actually going to be interacting with is the browser environment, the original environment in which JavaScript was made for. So they will right out of the gate be applying the coding concepts that they are learning in a sort of live browser. And then we very, very quickly introduce them to the Node backend environment. So and all of the sort of, which allows us actually to highlight the differences between those two different domains. So Node, for those that don't know, is essentially an environment in which to run JavaScript on the back end. And there's a lot more that can go into that. But that allows us to introduce another technology, Express. So whereas Rails, whereas Ruby has the Rails framework, or Python has the Django framework, one of the many frameworks available in JavaScript is Express, which is a very lightweight web server that interprets incoming web requests. So if you are navigating to some web page, you are making a request to some server somewhere. So students get to learn how to configure their own servers, manage the business logic, interpret the request that a user is making, retrieve and manage the data, and then display that on the page. So Express facilitates essentially, Express is the controller, essentially, or air traffic controller. And then the technology that we use that to interact with the data that's managed in an application, in this case is actually two technologies, connects and objection, which it just so happens are best friends. They love working well together. So both of them are query builders. They allow us to execute SQL queries against some database. So retrieve and manage and update and create data in a database somewhere. But we generally use connects for lower to the metal queries. So managing the structure of a database, essentially defining what rows and columns you want to have in your Excel spreadsheets in your database. And then objection serves as an ORM, an object relational model, that can abstract away some of the SQL that they would otherwise need to exhaustively write, and instead focus on sort of an object-oriented approach, again, to managing data. So those are some of the core technologies in the stack. There's, of course, also our testing technologies. So in this case, for unit testing, we're using Jest, which is a highly accessible JavaScript testing framework developed by Facebook. That is also that has many concepts that are widely used across a lot of unit testing frameworks. And then finally, Cypress, which is actually domain agnostic, which is really cool. So it's acceptance testing. That is, it tests a user's experience as if they were actually clicking on a web page, right? And you can use that framework for testing Express applications, Rails applications, Java Spring applications. And as those tests are actually being executed, they give you live snapshots of what is happening in a simulated browser, and even a final video about what that test was actually clicking on, which is really exciting.